Anyway,
right, do your fucking job. Come on, we've got stuff to do.
Right,
Tesco's closing.
This is where we're starting from there. We're starting from you saying do your fucking job. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Dutiful Future. Sorry, no, not welcome back to Dutiful Future. Welcome back to the Diet New Statesman podcast. I am not Anush, I am not Alva, and I am not Stephen. However, we do have a very integral part of the New Statesman's audio-visual world. I am joined by the New Statesman's very own polling guru, data journalist, and co-founder of Britiain Elects, which, if you hadn't heard of it, is the UK's largest poll aggregator. Ben Walker, hello.
Hello. that was intense. Jesus Christ. But congratulations for it. Thank you. Checks in the post.
Thank you. Thank you. Ben, for the insultingly uninitiated, for the troglodytes amongst us, who are you and what is it that you do?
I am Hugh's colleague at work. Oh God, I sound like Peter Mannion here from the thick of it. I am a data journalist at the New Statesman. I write on numbers. I see a spreadsheet and I think, let's turn it into a story. And then I also, in my spare time, and I've been doing it since 2013, running a poll account which covers political public opinion and election results for the horse race of the political world in the UK, Britiain Elects, which I've run since 2013, alongside my late best friend, Lily Jane Summers, who did sadly die in 2016. But yeah, that's it. He started off as a mum's basement type thing, and now it's turned into a spare room type thing. So progress.
I really respect that. This podcast has gone from mum's basement to room. So, not too bad. But it does mean I'm limited in space, because if I turn that camera even a couple inches that way, you will see the horror of what I live, and it's not pretty. Mm-hmm. I'm a big fan of the blurred background in our Zoom meetings. Anyway, enough about our boring work life. Let's talk about specifically your boring work life. So let's start with Britiain Elects. You give us a little bit of an insight into how that began, but obviously, right now it's an absolutely huge account, and as I said earlier, the largest poll aggregator in the UK. How did that begin? From the mum's basement, what was the story, and how did it blow up to what it is now?
Oh gosh, I feel like a celebrity. I'm going to enjoy it. I'm going to milk this for every day. Right. So, because I appreciate after this, I'm probably going to share it. So people will be like, right. So this is for people who want to know about Britiain Elects. Right. Hi. I co-founded Britiain Elects in 2013, alongside, as I must say, my late best friend, Lily Jane Summers. And we were just two political junkies. We were just two nerds who liked watching Prime Minister's questions. I was in sixth form at the time, actually, and it was David Cameron versus Ed Miliband. Ed Miliband always had a bad haircut, never could do anything with his voice. David Cameron looked prime ministerial, though disagreeable politically, never mind that. And then you had the rise of UKIP at that time, the disaster of the Lib Dems, and it was just an interesting time to cover. This was politics in a slightly chaotic mode. Myself and Lily were sort of just thinking, people treat politics like sport. It's the horse race. It's the, polling, council by-elections, elections. It's the political equivalent of a football match. And people like to watch and see how well their team is doing. And when you had the rise of UKIP and the collapse of the Lib Dems, people wanted to look at that, gawk, and potentially laugh. And so I thought about setting up an account called Britiain Elects. It's initially started off as something called the Columnist Elects, but it became Britiain Elects. And it was just initially covering council by-elections. Every Thursday, a random part of the country that you know absolutely nothing about goes to the polls to elect a councillor who either resigned because he was a bit of a brat, or was arrested, or was suspended, or might have died. And there's about 100 to 1,000 people who voted. And it's pretty interesting. The swings, you see Labour up 4 points. Wow, that's interesting. Here's what would happen if it was repeated across the country. And people looked at this and found it quite interesting. And we started from there. Council by-elections, the very minutiae of local government that no one really pays any attention to. And we popularised it. And we started to look at political polling. We thought the horse race. Labour at the time was ahead by 10 points. People want to know that. What would that mean if an election was held today? Labour would win 380 seats or something thereabout. This was 2013, by the way, different times. And we just began to popularise that in tweet form, condense it, bite-sized politics. I hate the term. People were obsessed with it then. And it took off then. We had 7,000 followers by the Scottish independence referendum of 2014. We had 13 to 15,000. I don't know why I remember these numbers. They've stayed in me for some reason. We had around 13 to 15,000 by the 2015 election, and we had about 70 to 80,000 by the 2016 EU referendum. That was when it began to really take off. And we've done quite well since then. During that time, though, I began to sort of realize that I actually want to talk about this. I don't want to just be, here's a number, here's a poll. I kind of want to, people kind of, I want to understand why people think the way they think. And it was from then, 2014 through to 16, that I began to understand political polling. At the time, I was one of those graphic designers. I was a graphic designer for some campaigns, for some campaign organizations down in London. It was the first time I visited London at that time. And they knew I was doing Britiain Elects. And one of the guys there sort of said, hey, let's do political polling together. You seem to know about it. And it was at that time that I began to sort of learn about polling itself, commissioning my own surveys. And it was in the run up to the EU referendum that I was doing a lot of this. A lot of it was about the EU referendum. It was there that I understood how the country felt about the subject of Europe. Europe to then equals immigration. It doesn't equal common agricultural policies. Mm-hmm. EU equals immigration. That's one of the main contributing reasons why the UK did vote to leave. It was there, by being a graphic designer, that I was able to sort of sidestep into political polling, learn about it, learn why the country thinks the way it thinks, and also trying to project what they would do if an election was held tomorrow. It was there, like around 2015, that I started building poll trackers, modelling, trying to sort of second guess what the public would do if an election was held today. And for that, took off. 2015 to 16, I was working in London for campaigns, and I moved to polling. Then I came back home. I made some money. I did quite well for myself. I then went to university quite late. I was meant to go in 2014, but I went in 16. I spent the time at university getting ridiculously drunk, having some of the best times of my life, and doing Britiain Elects, council by-election night from the inside of a club. If you've ever been to Chester, Rosie's nightclub in Chester, sometimes everyone's dancing and there's me in a corner like, Charnwood District Council, Lib Dem game from Tory. That's interesting. That's what I did. And
quick pause. Do you know the meme of like the guy talking to the girl and she looks like really, really like disinterested in the club? But it's like, did you hear? The local council just switched to Lib Dem.
Yeah. It sometimes works. Sometimes like, so what are you doing? I'm just writing about how the Tories are losing elections. It's like, that's amazing. That's brilliant. It's amazing. And did I win one around because of that? No. But I think to be one of my successes is making this kind of stuff interesting. I think I make political polling interesting. Because I treat it like a horse race, and that may bastardize the nuances of our political life. I still think it's an interesting thing to cover, and I think hopefully for your viewers and to your viewers and to those watching, same thing. Mm-hmm. I hope I do it in a successful way. I've always tried to be sort of non-partisan. I clearly have my politics. I have my views. Don't get me wrong here, but I ensure it doesn't get in the way of the way I read the country. I want to ensure that I can read the country properly, and I've been doing that since for God knows how long, and I love it. It was just a hobby, and now it's become a job.
And now it's really interesting. I was going to say, so interesting hearing the sort of progression from like, the pure just sort of like maths and stuff. I was good at graphic design, good at maths, etc, and then sort of shifting that towards, getting more involved in the actual politics of it. Do you see that as sort of where like, your job as a data journalist at the NS comes in, where it's like, okay, I can do this analysis, but then now I can contribute more on, a range of different topics. Is that something you try and like, that is the sort of two sides of the Ben Walker coin?
The Ben Walker. You're such a brown nose, aren't you? Don't be like that.
No. We're getting when we get to the second half of the podcast, it's all abuse. I'm just asking about all of it. It's
you researched me.
It's the two sides of the Dutiful Future coin, and the other side is bringing up the Discord server.
Oh no. Okay, right. Okay.
Don't worry, I'll beat that out.
No, actually, no. Let loose. It's always good to be full transparency. I'm all about kind of with push checks here and there. About your question about I'm a data journalist at the New Statesman. Have been since March 2020, just as the UK locked down, just as my mental health went Yeah, am I allowed to swear?
You
Yeah,
can
of course
swear as
I'm allowed
much
to
as
swear.
you want.
One of the worst things I do is a job. Like I feel like I use profanity a little too much, and no one has ever pulled me up on that. I'm in meetings sometimes that are just so boring, and then I just use the odd word shit, and everyone's like, "Oh, that's interesting." It's just descriptive. It's profanity is the expression of passion. But there we are. Right. What was your question?
I was asking about how you see like sort of the balance between Britain Elects and your position at the New Statesman, because obviously Britain Elects is more just about the numbers and just factual, like here's what's going on, and then so do you take your work at the NS to be a lot more I can bring that other side of it?
I sort of look at my job at the New Statesman as kind of quite validating in a way. Britain Elects is just a Twitter account. 300,000 followers. I know that's good, but it's just a Twitter account. You have other Twitter accounts who do in the same thing that we do are available, but what the New Statesman has been able to do to me, and I'm not trying to play the brown nose here, the simpering worker here, but they have sort of validated my position as someone who can actually analyze polls properly and effectively. Since I started publishing for the New Statesman, people have sort of said, that's good. That's good. Before then, people were like, who are you? Who are you? You're just someone who tweets polls when a pollster puts it out. It's very validating for actually a place to think that there is truck in what I have to write and the analysis that I give. It's very good. One of the better things about coming from a graphic design perspective is I went from graphic design to polling, commissioning polling, surveying the public, analysing it, and sort of understanding what plays with voters. Is sort of understanding at the same time, like what looks good. How do you get something across? And being a data journalist, you do a lot of charts. You do a hell of a lot of visualization. And I feel like because I used to be a designer, I'm sort of ahead of others in thinking like, that's how you express it. That's how you sort of show it. This is the one chart that works for people. And it's great. We've entered an era now where in media, there's a lot more data visualization, a lot more charts. And it's not just boring bar charts. It's like, it can be aesthetically pleasing, but people want to see more of it. And I'm really grateful for that because that means more work for me and more pay for me, I think.
Exactly. Well, not only loads of charts, daily charts, even.
Oh God!
So, little fun fact: I was the person who shared the daily charts every day up until last week. Mm-hmm. So I was the one like I'd get the buzz and I'd be like, "Ooh, it's Ben's this week, but which Ben? That's the fun day."
Yes, because we have an eclectic team of data journalists over at the New Statesman and Global Data. For those who don't know, the New Statesman is owned by a bigger company called Global Data. There are data journalists who work there. There's some brilliant people: Michael Goodyear, Catherine Swindles, Ben van der Merwe, Nico Kalkia. Oh no! I don't want to fall into favoritism because I'm forgetting names now. Oh, Polly Bindman. Yeah, Polly Bindman. Polly Bindman.
So you can say that. Say it in isolation, and I'll just cut to that.
Polly Bindman. We're not going to do that. But anyway, the team of data journalists are sort of they're an eclectic bunch. Like you have Sewa, who's really into flight crashes. She's obsessed with air crash investigations, and she wants to do data journalism on that. I think it's brilliant. And then you have my colleague Josh Raymond, who's a visual developer who is obsessed with racing and wants to do a visual project on racing, and it's just brilliant. But it's it right. You may have seen a study once. I mentioned The Office, the US version, and about Dwight Schrute, who is quite a let's be honest, an oddball, right? But there was a study that sort of didn't analyze The Office, but came after The Office, which said every office, every environment needs a Dwight. Every environment needs those types of people who think differently, who think outside the box. And we data journalists were quite like that. We're weirdos and we're proud of it. I'm quite proud of it, I think.
So we have the flight crashes, we have the racing. Would you say you have your version of like flight crashes in racing? Is there like, under the umbrella of like political polling, do you have like a little thing which is like,
I don't know. I get a kick. No, I get a kick out of political polling. It's brilliant. I love it. I'm fascinated by it. I direct message pollsters every now and again. We just talk about, we talk about polling, and it's fascinating. That's my kick. Is there any specialism, extras, weird specialisms for me? I don't know. No. No, I'm just weird, point blank.
So on polling, right? This is something I'm assuming you get this quite a lot. But so every single election cycle, no matter
Yes.
where it is in the world, the discourse comes up, which is, but polling is useless. It's just random numbers. Nothing can be tracked.
Yeah.
Do you have like a set response or perhaps a form of violence that you inflict upon someone when they when they would say, like, is it something that you see quite often? Someone's like, polling's useless. What would you say?
I've been getting that since 2013. The same suspects, those who are more populist in tone, tend to not believe polling because they feel it sort of does discriminate against them. The response normally is, polling is a science. And I don't know about you, when you were at school and did science, there was always this unwritten rule, which is how many times do you do a test? It's 3 times, isn't it? Every time you do a test, you do it 3 times. That's what polling always is. It's a test. That's why we have margins of error in polling. When you do one poll, there's going to be a range. There's going to be a gap. Okay. Nonetheless, political polling, market research, survey work has history, has form for being pretty accurate, and has been increasingly accurate with every year. We'll talk about some famous failures. 1940, I can't remember which one was it, 1946, Thomas Dewey versus Harry Truman. Thomas Dewey, the Republican, was meant to win, and the Chicago Tribune wrote it up as, what?
I think Tribune.
Yeah,
on the screen now.
Tribune. Oh, you got it on the screen now? Is it on the screen now? Oh, hello, wonderful. Excellent editing. Dewey defeats Truman, right? Or Dewey defeats Truman, I can't remember. This was based on some bad polling, but polling has a range. Polling's an error. So let's say if it's like 52-48, EU referendum, just remember there is a margin of error. There's a gap. It's often 3 points. Not always like that, but the way we cover it is quite badly. Nonetheless, though, you have the instance of 1940 something. Dewey v. Truman got it wrong by a few points. Fair enough. Then you had 1992 in the United Kingdom, in which we overstated the Labour Party, understated the Tories. That was simply a case of we weren't speaking to enough Tories, or rather the way in which we conducted our polling wasn't talking to enough Tories. So, you survey a random sample, but really there's more Tories out there who are more willing to turn out, who are not in that random sample. They're more located on the outer echelons. I may not be explaining this properly. And then you have in America, recently, 2020, Biden was meant to win by a landslide or do extremely well. He didn't. He was only a few points off losing. We were only a few points away from a second Trump term. And the reason for that was that people who don't pay attention to politics, people who tell me polls aren't right, people who don't trust pollsters, don't trust market research firms, don't trust politicians, lack of trust equates to a propensity to vote for populist candidates. The vast majority of populist candidates we know of are on the right, i.e. Trump. These types of people who don't respond to pollsters, more likely to vote for Trump, but again, don't respond to pollsters. There is a risk with polling right now where we're not talking to the right people. Nonetheless, we are still getting it. We're still getting it pretty right. I think what we were saying for the New Statesman poll tracker, we had it like 51 for Biden, and eventually it was 48 for Biden, 49 for Biden. Right? That's not bad.
No.
That's all right. In 2019, we had it like 43 for the Tories, or 44 for the Tories, and then 32 for Labour. Bang on, not bad. 2017, we had it. This is where we kind of there's one mistake here. 2017, we had it like 42 for the Tories, and then we had it 30 for Labour. We understated. No, we didn't have 30 for Labour. We had 37 for Labour. We understated Labour by 3 points. Okay. Again, mistakes happen, but generally speaking, polling does get it within a decent range. Just remember, the numbers you see on the screen add a bit of range to them. Always think they could be 3 points higher or 3 points lower. Don't interpret them as like 100% likely to be those numbers. Otherwise, if you do, you're interpreting polling incorrectly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember because I did in the build to the last US election, I did a podcast with my friend who is a big polling guy as well. And I think, I was being classic host person, trying to catch them, like we're trying to get some like really like nice, clean statements. But he every single time was just like, think about the margin of error, blah, 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 and it's really important. And it's an interesting one to keep in mind because as you know, someone who's obviously a big fan of polling, how much do you keep in mind, or how aware are you of the fact that polling in and of itself has become like a political, like delineated line? Like you said, more people who are generally going to be populist will tend to, you know, criticize polling more. Is this something that you're sort of, is it something that like you're consciously aware of? How much of an impact does it have on the way that you might present polling, or even try and consider it in any way? Or is this just something when you say, look, I get it, there's people out there who don't like it, but power on?
Yeah, I met most of the time I say the latter, although there is great currency in saying the former, which is like you should always look at the ranges. But people want to see headline numbers. My editors want to see headline numbers. Yeah. Everyone wants to see headline numbers. People don't want to see, well, if you look at the nuance, Labour's probably between 380 seats and 302 seats. Like, there's too much margin for that. That's not telling you a news line. You kind of have to blame the way in which we as a media cover things, really. We don't help ourselves because we want a definitive news line, which is that the Labour Party will win 300 and something seats and Keir Starmer will be the next Prime Minister. That's the sad way things are. That is the sad... I don't know what I was going to...
Sad reality?
That's the sad reality of our times, yeah. There are some who do stick to ranges, though. The Economist has an excellent polling journalist there who goes by the name of G. Elliot Morris, who has published some excellent work on forecasting both the United States and France. Didn't get the US as well as others, but what he was sticking to, which was quite commendable for him, was not the definitive figure, the range. Okay, right. And what he's doing with France is this. I don't know how many of your viewers have paid attention, but did you know there's an election in France coming up, a presidential election? Emmanuel Macron is having a go again, thinks he can win re-election, and according to the current numbers, he probably will. But what the Economist is doing with their modelling is they're not giving you Macron will win 55%. They are saying Macron will win between 52% and 58%. And that's good. That's reasonable. That sort of cushions your expectations, but it's not as attractive a news line, which is regrettable. But it's the realities of our time. I think we will still stick to the definitive numbers. That risks... I think I don't think it will be as much of an issue in the future. We are becoming a vastly more, the more we talk about polling, the more people will understand this. Polling has only sort of come on to the stage of the great masses at the advent of social media now. We're still in that stage where people are only beginning to just pay attention to social media. Your grandmother, who's 80 something, is only realizing now, what's Twitter, Facebook, my son Nathan. No, that's not how you do it. You got to log into an account. So people are still doing that. You know, we've still got a long way to go. And I think our understanding of polling will come with that too. The more logged on we are, the more aware of how polls work will be. And it's not that difficult. It's a science. It's, again, free tests.
It's a great way of putting it, I think, because I remember, in similarly political nerd fashion, waking up after a 2-hour attempted power nap for the US election with my array of snacks, hopefully American.
Which one, 16 or 20?
20. Definitely 20. I was 16 in the 16 one, and I was still learning. I'd only just started liking politics, but that's not interesting. 20, waking up for my American snacks. I bought Budweiser. It's terrible. It was a great time. And I remember watching and realizing, even though this was like, regular mainstream coverage, pretty much every time they said a number and it was still a projection, they'd go, but of course, within the margin of error, 3-4, this could go like that and flip that. And it seemed to be quite a consciously like put out there statistic.
Good of them. It's very good of them.
Which I think is that good balance, right? Because I think you can still have the fancy headline, bang, look at this fun number, and then in the little fine print, oh, by the way, And I think it's a great point that as people get more online, they'll sort of get more familiar with the concept and sort of understand that like that healthy medium skepticism rather than just it's a perfect science or it's atrocious and it's useless. Right, we've been dancing around with the abstract concept of polling for a hot minute now. let's dive in a little bit. I've already asked you, I'm assuming, the most common question someone like yourself gets, i.e., is polling any use? And let's go for the second most obvious polling question I'm sure you get all the time. From what we're looking at right now, from just what you've seen, top of your head, no need to to cite anything crazy, just from what your vast knowledge. If an election was held tomorrow, what do you think would happen?
It'd be fun. It's going to be amazing. We don't really know. Right. So at the time of recording, it's the 16th of February in the year of our Lord 2022, and Boris Johnson is in the spot above her. Such a shame. The polls at the moment show the Labour lead between 3 points and 10 points. What would happen if an election was held tomorrow? Would that be translated into reality? So we don't know, to better tell you the truth. I've written about this extensively. Others have talked about it extensively. Fact is, at the moment, the country's very pissed off with Boris Johnson. Rightly. Partygate, one rule for us, another for him, and so on and so forth. That has resonated quite strongly with voters. His approval is in the pits. We haven't seen anything a fall like it for quite some time with a party leader. But we are in new waters. Brexit, the EU referendum in 2016 upended people's loyalties. You had Labour voters going Leave, and the Labour Party feeling a world away from them, right? And so these types of Labour Leave voters thought, we are not the same people anymore, and so that tribal loyalty broke. And then you had the Johnsonianism of the Conservative Party, and you had a fair number, not as much, of Conservative Remain voters hanging, this isn't our party anymore. Tribal loyalties that parties have been reliant on, loyal to, taken for granted even, which kept places like Canterbury, safe Tory, which kept places like the Rother Valley, the Yorkshire coalfields in South Yorkshire, the People's Republic of South Yorkshire, as journalists in the 80s, 90s and early noughties called it, loyally Labour. Those tribal loyalties were broken by Brexit, broken too by globalisation, concern about immigration. The Labour Party didn't cater for that, and other issues. What it's meant is that people are more swingy than ever before. We are... I don't want to promote one of my own pieces, but I'm very proud of one of my articles I did, which is we are now a nation of swingers. We are more swingy than ever before. The idea of someone going from Tory to Labour to Green is actually quite reasonable. It's quite possible, actually. We are less loyal to tribal loyalties. The only people who will say, my dad would turn in his grave if I voted. My dad would turn in his grave if I voted Labour, or something to that effect. That's the reserve of the elderly electorate now. It's not the reserve of the vast majority. We have moved on. As a consequence, there is a risk it could be harder to predict elections, because there is a debate in polling now, which is what do you do with people who previously declared for a party and are now saying, I'm unsure who I'm going to vote for at the next election. And the polls at the moment, the reason we have these large Labour leads is because a lot of Tories are now saying, I don't know, I'm pissed off with Boris. I'm not sure if I'll move to another party. I'm not sure if I'll vote even. And the fact is, we don't know which of those they're going to do. All they are is they're undecided. What that means is are we going to make assumptions? Because normally voters who are pissed off with their party midterm tend to return. Example, Exhibit A, 2010 to 15. You had Tory voters who were pissed off with David Cameron. They either went to UKIP for a little while or they stayed at home, be it over gay marriage, be it over immigration, be it over the European Union. And then by the time of the 2015 election, Cameron was talking about English votes to English laws. He was talking about the SNP being a threat to Englishness and other things, strong economy, long-term economic plan, and it got those types of voters to come out back for them. Right. So normally, although that's only one exhibit, normally voters who are unsure about their politics tend to return home. That hasn't always happened though. 1997, one of the reasons for Labour's largest landslide was that turnout fell, and that turnout fell because Tory voters, a great swathe of them, stayed at home because they had no enthusiasm for the party in which they were supporting. We are at a stage now in our political life in this country where Conservatives have no enthusiasm for the party in which they previously supported.
Mm-hmm.
Boris Johnson does not inspire enthusiasm, love as much as love. I'm not going to use the word love. Boris Johnson does not inspire.
Hey,
Boris
I don't know. I don't know if you've seen Nadine Dorries anytime recently, but that's love.
Yeah.
That's love.
Yeah.
That's love I will never witness, and that's upsetting.
I know. You know, I don't necessarily want to talk about my own politics. I try to keep them quite separate. But about 10 years or so ago, I found Nadine Dorries quite entertaining and quite likable, even because she was basically delivering hell to David Cameron and George Osborne, two posh boys who don't know the price of milk. And I just thought, go on, lad. Go on, love, rather. And I just thought, this is great. This is what I want. Then she went to the jungle, such as quite UKIP, and I thought, like, yeah, you're all right. And then I grew up, and then I got better politics, but that's beside the point.
So true.
We've all had our political journeys. Let's not beat around the bush here. And we're in that stage now where it's just like, do you talk about it? I don't know. But anyway, that's so I am
what this channel's about, baby.
Yeah, dutiful. Oh God, yeah. Anyway, we're going back to the polling here. We are at a stage now, basically, where Tory voters aren't endeared to their party.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea they're all going to come home at election time, which is what some pollsters are now assuming, is risky. That's why you're seeing some 3-point leads for Labour. That's what they're banking on. We don't know. We really don't know. So if an election was held tomorrow, I would say Labour would probably emerge as the largest party. I think there would probably be an instance where Labour plus SNP plus Liberal Democrats would equate to a majority. I don't think there would be Labour and SNP as a coalition. I don't think the Labour Party would wear that. I think they know that the SNP is still a toxic brand in the country of England. Despite Nicola Sturgeon being quite popular herself, she commands a lot of approval in England. Not as much as she did before when Alex Salmond tried to paint her as a witch and all that kind of stuff. But you know, she does command some quite surprising levels of approval in England. SNP, however, doesn't. The idea of breaking the union up is anathema in England, really. So Labour getting into bed with that is like a betrayal of everything this country is. And so that's why it has struck with the country. But nonetheless, if an election was held tomorrow, Labour would be the largest party for now.
Mm-hmm.
Does that answer your question?
It answers it perfectly.
I talk a lot. I do apologise. We should make this more chatty.
I've always said, this is like I literally said this beforehand, no one's here for me. All right. I'm a facilitator,
okay.
You know, for big ideas and the battleground of ideas and things that Dave Rubin sometimes says. So, and on the flip side of that, right, what I'm interested in is, you know, I guess, you know, that's quite an interesting way of understanding, right, what's the political mood right now. But in terms of understanding the political mood in a more like realistic, I guess, like, you know, pragmatic sense, you had an article published yesterday as of recording, so Tuesday, the 15th, my birthday.
Happy birthday. How old are you now? 22.
22, exactly. Look at you.
Yeah, because you said you were 16 and 26. Oh,
this
Congratulations.
This guy knows maths. I mean,
and the numbers. I got a spreadsheet out right now. I've been calculating your right.
You just have a spreadsheet open. It just says Hugh.
Just Hugh. One word. Age. How old? Where are you?
21. Maybe? Question mark. And then boom, you've solidified it now. But yeah, so in a more realistic sense, you had an article out that said, how big is Labour's polling lead, right? And I'm interested in, so maybe if you could like establish what their lead is, how solid or strong you think it is, and whether that could survive, whether a year, a couple of years, until we would have a next general election. So how stable do you think that is going forward?
Yes. I don't know. I can't. That's the harsh truth about it. We don't know. We are in, as I said before, we are in uncertain territory. Voters are more swingy than ever before. Voters are more uncertain than ever before. Loyalty to Labour isn't what it used to be. The base that backed Corbyn's Labour in 2019 isn't exactly the keenest about Starmer's Labour, but Starmer's Labour is winning different kind of voters. So there's a bit of churn going on. So you could imagine a situation where a lot of those Corbyn Labour voters do flirt with the Greens from time to time. We're not really seeing that. We're seeing a little bit, but not enough to warrant a sort of like Labour be worried type of move. But yeah, there's just a lot more fluidity in this country at the moment. Do I think Labour can hold its nerve and hold the lead until the next election? I don't know. Few things to watch out for. We are in uncertain, as I said before, we are in uncertain waters, but we are in uncertain waters for a few things. The leader of the Conservative Party is now less popular than the leader of the Labour Party. We rarely see that. Actually, tell a lie, we haven't seen that since about 2010. So for about 12 years now, the leader of the Conservative Party, he or she may be unpopular, he or she may be reviled by the country, but he or she can take heart that he or she is not as hated as the leader of the Labour Party. The leader of the Labour Party, be it Miliband, Corbyn, and a little bit of Starmer, they were always behind the Tory leader. Brown was the same. We're not seeing that right now. Starmer is more disliked than liked, but the thing that works in his favour is that about 3 in 10 of the country don't have an opinion of him.
So you said that, in the UK politics, generally, Tory leaders will be, even if they're not having a good time, they're normally ahead of a Labour leader. I think generally, when I think politics, I don't know, maybe it's because I tend to be more interested in American politics, what I know a little bit more about. And I've always just kind of had an assumption that when people get into power, their polls and their popularity go down just because they promise a lot or they make a lot of big plans and then they can't always achieve that sort of thing. And since the Tories have been in power for so long, however, they still managed to maintain higher popularity than Labour. Is that something that's very out of the ordinary in sort of global politics, or is this actually a general trend?
The UK is famous for the fact it hates its politicians. So in the US, approval for Joseph Biden and Donald Trump is like 40-60. So 40% approve of them, 60% don't. Yeah, choose the polls you want, but generally that's the trend. Or 45-55. Joe Biden is polling in some instances quite just as bad as Donald Trump, albeit maybe only just a few points better. The idea that a politician will have 40% approval is par for the course in America. It's shockingly good in Britain. Okay, so 40% approval in Britain means you're on your way. You're probably on your way to being the next prime minister. In America, it's like in a nation divided 50-50 or 55-45 to those with a progressive mindset. It's normal. They're just more partisan in a different interpretation of the term there. In France, France hates their politicians too, but in a general sort of 60-40 way, about 60% will always be unhappy. That's because of the voting system. In France, you have a two-round system. You have a sort of free-for-all in the first round, and then the top 2 candidates, or in constituency fights, sometimes the top 3 candidates progress to the second round. And as a consequence, you sometimes have instances where the candidate who 60-70% of the country didn't want as their first choice for president gets elected. So naturally, the vast majority of France will be opposed. Really, in Britain, we just don't like our politicians. I'm trying to think when it started. To tell you the truth, it's always kind of been like that. We've always been quite cynical of our politicians. Even at the end of the Second World War, we were quite like, the snaps in the trough. We thought at the end of the Second World War, we thought Winston Churchill was a great war hero, but a bad politician. And he showed himself up for that at the end of the war, comparing the Labour Party to the Gestapo. It just didn't work for him, and voters noticed that. And voters in the UK have been quite a cynical lot, really. We don't tend to be enamoured with people unless there's a crisis. We were enamoured with Winston Churchill during the Second World War because he was the great wartime prime minister that he was. We just thought he was a pretty shit politician generally, though. We were enamoured with Rishi Sunak when he was the furlough chancellor. We are less so now because one, furlough's over. COVID is disappearing from public consciousness, even though it still exists as a pandemic throughout the world. Don't know if you noticed. But generally speaking, no, politicians aren't popular here normally. Is it normal for the Labour Party to be behind the Tories in terms of leader favourability? Yes. Even during the days of the miners' strike, even when Mrs. Thatcher was disestablishing publicly owned industry, and at the time the public weren't really bought round to that, she was still polling better than Michael Foot. I think, although it got very close on occasions. Michael Foot didn't really poll well with the public. He was a lovely gentleman who clearly had a sense of ideal, but he was never seen as prime ministerial.
Okay.
Neil Kinnock seemed a little bit better, but again, generally polled worse than Thatcher, except on rare occasions. What is it about Tories that do better than Labour politicians?
Yeah. I wanted to ask, do you think maybe it's like do you think it's like, I've heard a lot of theories about this sort of thing where it's like, the image, how important the sort of image of being prime ministerial is, and generally the public associate that more with posh people.
You got it right.
But also there's another side of it. Yeah. Another side of it I wanted to ask about is like there's that side, and then there's also like, do you think maybe there's could that potentially be like just the type of maybe like mindset of more of a right-wing base, which is that more of a belief in like hierarchy and more of a commitment to one person, whereas I feel like you look at the left and there's more of a tendency to be like really critical over a leader you don't really like because there's less of a commitment to the concept of leadership, or any of these sort of theories kicking at you?
Yeah, you got that in one, I think, actually. Leadership. Most Labour candidates for Prime Minister, it's not an official title, but you know what I mean. Most Labour candidates for Prime Minister don't look prime ministerial. Ed Miliband, he did not look prime ministerial. He was talking the right things about the cost of living crisis generally. He was talking about the issues of the time, but he just did not look prime ministerial. And that is key. The reason why David Cameron continuously led Ed Miliband on the public's preference for prime minister was, you can answer it yourself, he looked it. He looked apart. He looked like a leader. Is this country obsessed with hierarchy? Yeah, I think it could be. I think we are a mildly rebellious country with an affinity with authority. We're the type of people who's like, right, these are the rules, we'll follow them, but don't push our luck. Yeah, we're quite a submissive, but we are a rebelliously submissive country. There's a lot to write about that.
Yeah.
I was reading Robert Tombs's The English and Their History, and it really, and whilst it kind of imagines the English as quite an idealized people, it does make sense. It does make sense. We do submit to authority, but we are rebellious at the same time.
You could almost fit that into the concept of like being rebellious, but only within the context of our own internal authority. Like, you think about like, I don't know, World War II, it was like, we are our own thing, we stick to our own guns, and like obviously rightly so, but you're like, okay, maybe the only time, oh, hello, cat.
Hello. Say hello.
What's their name?
Lily, named after my liver spender gentleman. No.
Lily, if you touched me, I'd die. So
you're allergic?
I'm allergic.
Oh no! Carry on. I was interested about your war point. Keep going.
I was saying like, and it in the context of like, Britain can be very rebellious, but only within sort of the structures that it's comfortable with, and it's more about rebellious against threats to said structure rather than progressive overhauls of the traditions or values that we hold.
Yeah, perfect example is this. During the Second World War, George Orwell wrote a brilliant book called The Lion and the Unicorn, and it's about socialism and the English genius. That's his subtitle of it. Sure. And it's just basically about how should English socialism survive after the war? How should it approach things? How should it win elections? And the left generally doesn't sort of identify with, in England at least, with the country with which it exists. There's like a disconnect, regrettably. And what Orwell sort of said was that we are a country that likes our traditions. We are a country that likes our monarchy. But my goodness me, do we want to tax it? My goodness me, do we want to reduce inequality? My goodness me, do we want all these socialist things? But we want the traditionalist baubles that come with it. This is the country that we are. And we have not changed. We have always been that. We are a country endeared to the Queen. We are a country endeared to, the notions of Englishness and Britishness and all that kind of imperialist stuff. But at the same time, we are quite economically left-wing, socially redistributive, quite egalitarian. We are a hypocritical nation, if on paper, but most voters don't see us as hypocritical. There was a question, and I don't remember what it was.
Well, I'll move on to the different question. Do you think maybe that sort of like contradiction plays into why the UK hates their politicians so much? Because we have that balance between we want these like the baubles of tradition, as you put it, but we actually also want people who tend to be, more egalitarian, more about redistribution. And a lot of the time, those two things don't really match. There isn't much of a mesh between maybe that combination. So a lot of time we want to vote in someone who, is David Cameron, loves monarchy, is posh, but that clashes very hardly with the other side of it. And these two like warring, beliefs always lead us, whether they're from one camp or the other, to dislike them.
Yeah. There was something I kind of noticed from the 2010 to 2016 era, which was that Nigel Farage, who is a right-wing politician, quite radically right, extreme right by some metrics, he had great appeal amongst certain kinds of Labour voters. Voters of the left, because he was talking about a sense of identity, a sense of community. And it's not the community of city culture, although it's also community. It was a community of, you've lost something, let's get it back, right? And that kind of talking endeared a lot of Labour voters to the idea of voting Leave. And that sort of accelerated the disconnect between a lot of Labour Leave voters and their parties. Yeah, one of the potentially contributing reasons why we just don't like our politicians is because they're not really saying what we want. They think they know what we want. We're in a situation now where the Tory lead is non-existent. Labour is ahead by a good few points. And a number of Tories are thinking, let's talk about trans rights. No, the country doesn't really care about trans rights. The country is actually quite generally supportive of trans rights. This idea of fermenting culture war is the reserve of newspaper op-eds, not the nation at large. And our parties don't deserve, the parties that currently exist in this country don't deserve the country it exists in, because they don't know how to talk to them.
Then I am tragically aware of time, as Ben said, he does need to go to the shops at some point.
And do you go to Tesco? Meal deals, not meal deal. Why would I get a meal deal? That's bollocks.
a meal deal at this time of night.
No, maybe not. I don't know what I want really. I need to shop for.
Is it for your dinner or for like weekly shop?
Weekly shop. I like to get it done at the midweek for some reason, but yeah, I'm also having parties in the next few days. Hey, COVID's meant to be over. Yeah, but whatever. Carry on. Ask your questions.
Good luck. Well, I was gonna say I will ask you one more question before we tragically say goodbye to the dear people at home. I'm just sort of interested in, we've been talking to you for a while now. Your Twitter's right below. Why should people be following you going forward? And by that, what I really mean is what are going to be the main subjects and topics you're going to be covering going forward in the next year? Do you have anything really interesting? Like, I know you're contributing to France Elects, for example, obviously a mini series covering the French election. What are going to be sort of the key themes or features that you're going to be analyzing in the next upcoming months and years?
Why should they be following me? They shouldn't. No, don't be silly. They shouldn't be following me. I sometimes tweet some hopefully interesting stuff, and then I tweet random shit. Right? I don't believe in. I wouldn't say I have no filter, but I just generally believe, why should I sort of put on a sort of like when some people in the media world like news, I have now become a so and so of so. Well, no, I'm not interested in that. I don't know. Why should people follow me? Well, why should people follow Britiain Elects? Get a snapshot of why the country is voting the way it is. Try and understand why your people voted, why the people you rubbed shoulders with on the bus voted Leave, why the people did not like Corbyn, why the people didn't backed Boris, and so on and so forth. It's high time that in this country of 60-something million people, we try to understand it and why it votes the way it is, why not everyone in the South is, rich as can be, why not everyone in the North is going to benefit from levelling up, why that's what hopefully my Twitter feed will be for, trying to just sort of giving a bit of clarity to our nation, because I think understanding why our country is the way it is most key of all. That's it. Sorry, I'm shit at telling myself.
Do not need to apologize. Thank you very much, Ben. This has been really, really fun, an interesting and nerdy dive into all
Well, I thought you were gonna ask me some really difficult questions. Where are they?
Oh, I lied. I don't have any.
Okay. I was looking forward to that. I was confronting my demons or whatever.
I was going to bring up like a Chris Hansen style notebook. Why don't you have a seat, Ben? Why don't you have a seat? Do you remember? Do you remember 2014? No, I have nothing.
No, we didn't talk about that.
I didn't think to join the Discord and do some science. But perhaps in a month's time, I'll be like, oh yeah, Ben, do you want to do like a little, another little polling update? And you'll be like, oh yeah, Hugh, that'd be great. Last time was so much fun. You're so cool. And then you'll join call, and I will go. So user Karl Marx Daddy 69 said some horrible things in your server. Why are you personally responsible?
Yeah. For context, to those who don't know, I have Britain Elects has a Discord server, which is pretty good, but about 80% of the people are either extreme right or extreme left, and it's quite combative as a consequence. It's good for the political dialogue, don't get me wrong. The memes are brilliant, but my goodness me, is it intense and exhausting. But I love the people who are there, and the moderators do a great job. But yeah.
Beautiful. Shout out to the Britian Elects Discord channel. But yes, follow Ben on Twitter. BNH Walker is a great account. Lots of mixed stuff. My personal favorite was about 40 minutes before we started recording. Ben tweeted out, "It's been a long week." And it's a Wednesday, so
it's been a long week. Yeah,
we know how that goes. And also check out Britian Elects. They are a great account that does great work. I've said enough nice things about you, Ben. Thank you so much for coming on, and thanks everyone for watching.
Thank you very much. God bless.